ace match between the two teams, and now we are ready to go.
Here it is, the ace match for day one of the quarterfinals between SK Telecom and STX Seoul, spawning in the bottom right-hand position as the Orange Terran. Playing for STX Seoul, his name is Innovation.
His opponent spawns in the bottom left position as Blue Terran, playing for SK Telecom T1. His name is Fantasy.
Fantasy most likely has something up his sleeve here. I'm just really curious to see what it is. I don't think he'll play a straight-up game. I think that his build can bring him into a standard game, but he wants to get an edge early on.
And both of these teams, yes, they do. Yes, this is a best-of-3 series between the two teams, but they want to win today because, remember, they only have around 20 hours to prepare for the next match, which is going to be played tomorrow. Whoever wins today's match is going to have a little bit of an edge going into tomorrow's match. They don't have to prepare as much. They will be relaxed going into tomorrow's match with a confidence boost from today's match. So that's why STX Seoul and SK Telecom T1, they're putting up a lot of strategical plays on today's match against their opponent.
No surprise to see a Barracks first opening from both of these guys. They're probably just respecting that the other player could potentially cheese them as well early on. So we're not going to see that.
Yeah, and just talking about the two teams when it comes to post-season, like I mentioned before, they did meet in post-season 2 times. However, STX Seoul always fell to SK Telecom T1 in the ace match. When it comes to the regular season, SK Telecom T1 is 4-2 against STX Seoul. But hey, it's a close match between the two teams, and now we're in the ace match with Innovation playing for STX Seoul and Fantasy playing for SK Telecom T1.
Yeah, no surprises to see it go all the way to the ace match here, absolutely. No surprise there. All right, well, we don't see anything specific coming out from either player just yet. Standard openings all around. We have a Marine in production here from Fantasy. Same with Innovation, of course. They're going to probably use that Marine to scout around a little bit, look for some potential proxies. At this point, the builds are completely identical. And here we go. This is what I was talking about. Fantasy, he's already putting his SV in a specific location. He's almost has enough minerals for the proxy factory. And it looks like we are going to go ahead and see that.
Innovation is also making a factory for himself, but remember, because of the positioning, if Fantasy decides to go for early pressure, he's going to hit it much sooner than his opponent.
Yeah. Also, the air distance between that proxy location and Innovation's base, pretty close as well. And I guess now it's just a guessing game of what kind of pressure is he going to go. Is he going to go straight into the starport, try to go for early click Banshees? Will he try to make a few Widow Mines and go for a drop? May even try to use Hellbats, but they have been nerfed since the most recent patch, so I'm not sure if that would be the best choice anymore for Terran players in TvT.
Yeah, remember, a lot of Terran players were preparing for the new patch on Thursday. It did hit a little bit later in Korea, but this also means that these players, they know that the Hellbats have been nerfed, and they're trying their best to play around with it. Now we have Innovation starting with the starport and the Tech Lab add-on right next to the factory.
Indeed we do. And okay, Widow Mine's in production from Fantasy here, so that's going to be his choice. The Widow Mine drop. He's going to bring his Marines over there as well, so he could do use the Marines to drop along with the Widow Mines.
Yeah, and Fantasy should be really happy that his opponent is not going for a scout, because Innovation, he's playing from the one base, going for the factory barracks starport play, which is nice for him, but the problem is if Fantasy can sneak in the medevac inside the main base, then he's going to deal a lot of damage, no problem.
All right, Banshee in production, Cloak as well starting, and look at this, man. We're going to have a Widow Mine out and 4 Marines for defense on Innovation's side of the map. The drop, if Fantasy doesn't micro this correctly, it's going to get picked off quite easily.
Yeah, so now it really depends on the micro from Fantasy. Can he actually avoid this one particular Widow Mine that Innovation has? That's going to be the key in this matchup.
This is going to be a little bit too risky on his end. Fantasy also realizing there's nothing out here. All right, Fantasy, will he realize what's going on? Oh no, here comes the drop. It picks off everything. Fantasy loses everything, and that drop, Innovation holds. And this is going to mean that we'll see a swift counterattack with the Banshee from Innovation.
Yeah, look at this Fantasy making an emergency Viking with the cloak being researched, but the problem is he doesn't have them. He only has 4 Marines back at home. He's building an engineering bay to make sure he can see those Banshees get the main base, but the problem is he lost it. You know, he spent a lot of minerals getting the medevac out, getting the Widow Mine out, using the 4 Marines to drop inside the main base, and poof, not even dropped a single unit inside the main base.
Innovation read Fantasy like a book. He knew that there was going to be some early pressure. He defended against it perfectly, losing nothing to the harassment there. Now this Banshee is just going to continue to be annoying, pick off a few Marines here and there, and we do have a turret on the way here in the main mineral line that's going to complete. We will be able to see that cloaked Banshee, but it could run out of position, just a little bit out of the cloak range. Fantasy continuing to lose more and more Marines, and a scan goes down. Fantasy is gonna pick it off. Yes, he gets the Banshee.
He does get the Banshee. There is a second one out on the way for Innovation, but Innovation in perfect position. Fantasy trying to spend all of his minerals trying to get those units out, but his opponent, he's getting a command center, he's getting a siege thing, he's getting a Raven behind this.
Now that means the cloak from Fantasy's end of the spectrum not going to be useful at all here. There's also a Widow Mine as well to help deter the Banshee with the Marines in the mineral line. Innovation, his defense is just looking stellar here, and he's continuing to harass, getting a few kills with these Banshees here, up to 3, 4, and ooh, that Widow Mine. If a scan goes down while that Banshee tries to escape, things are going to be bad. There is a Raven out though, no scan will be needed. And Fantasy, he has to multitest properly here. Scan goes down, he's going to try to pick off the Banshee. It's going to escape before getting picked off here, but the cloak, it's going to end in a few seconds here.
Well, just really unfortunate that Fantasy has to scan to get the Banshee at this point. He's far behind in economy, and he wants to use some energy to drop the mules instead of using the energy to scan that pesky Banshee just running around the main base. And Innovation's doing a nice job. The first Banshee did get picked off, but the second Banshee is just being really annoying to Fantasy right now by staying alive in this game.
That's so. All right, Innovation chasing away this cloaked Banshee. The starport on the run as well. Gonna run back home to the main base. Viking won't be able to pick that off. They're gonna go ahead and return home. Now the problem for Fantasy is that he's pretty far behind on economy. Yes. He does have a okay amount of units, so maybe a little bit less than Innovation, but that's not where he's really hurting. The economy situation is what's killing Fantasy in this right now.
And slowly it's going to snowball to Innovation's favor as he has to siege things way earlier than his opponent. He has a lot of Marines out right now compared to his opponent. And, you know, at this point, yes, the unit counts may be similar, but, you know, 3 minutes down, 5 minutes down, Innovation is going to have a lot more units. So that's the reason why Fantasy is going for a third command center, knowing that he needs to do something to try to come back in the economy wars against his opponent.
The Banshee looks like it's going to be able to escape. Just barely here.
The problem is the energy is going to run out soon.
Yeah, the energy running out. Oh, okay, the Banshee's decloaked, and the last hit from the Viking destroys the Banshee. We have another one moving in here from Fantasy, and that means that there is no Raven in the mineral line for Innovation. He's going to have to burn a scan there. Scan goes down instantly. The Banshee gets picked off very quickly by the Widow Mine, and I can't even. Where's that?
There is in the middle, right there.
Oh, there it is. It's hiding. I think even the Korean commentators had a bit of an issue trying to find it. And at this point, Innovation, he's now able to contain his opponent. Without Fantasy mining at the natural, that's just going to slowly dwindle the chances for Fantasy to come back into this game. He needs that 2-base economy if he wants to drag it into the macro game.
You know, this is like watching set number 3 between Mini and Parting once again. As, you know, Innovation, he's going to apply constant pressure against his opponent, and he's just going to make sure that Fantasy cannot take the natural expansion by sitting over there with tons of Marines and siege tanks.
So the big issue here for now Fantasy is that he can't push down because he has a similar army count to his opponent. I mean, he can try to make something happen with the drop. I'm not sure if that's enough to really deter Innovation from containing his opponent.
Well, Innovation has to screw up and lose a lot of SCVs to the single drop, but the problem is the turret is in position, the Widow Mine is already in position, so Fantasy needs to move around a little bit, and he also needs to make constant units back home to defend against the siege tanks.
I think we're going to see round 2 between the turret and Widow Mine.
Goodbye once again.
It seems Fantasy unable to learn from his mistakes as he loses yet another medevac to the turret Widow Mine combination and stellar positioning from Innovation.
And like I said, before the game began, all Innovation has to do is defend against the early pressure from Fantasy to win this particular game. The Siege Tank gets hurt from the Secret Missile. Second one goes down, and it gets taken out.
And with the slow creep push from Innovation, eventually Fantasy is going to be forced back into a hole, and he's going to get drained out here. Another drop is attempting to go down in the main base, but Innovation, he's got Marines, he's got his Siege Tanks. The drop does nothing. Forced back. And I almost think this is an unwinnable position now for Fantasy. It's only a matter of time before he runs out of resources in his main base. He has 3 orbitals. The mules are going to mine out the main base faster as well. In Innovation, he does take a 3rd base, moving now across the map with 2 medevacs full of units.
This drop is going to kill Fantasy right now. He only has 2 siege tanks from the ground. He doesn't have a lot of Marines to defend against the medevacs. And once the Marines drop on the siege tanks and the siege tank starts charging up their main ramp, what does Fantasy have to defend against a high number of Marines and siege tanks that Innovation has right now?
I mean, look at the Marine count. 45 for Innovation, 13. Yeah. And Fantasy is moving down. He wants to try to take out some of the tanks. Nice positioning from Fantasy. Will it be enough, though? He's going to be forced back in this position. The tanks are doing their job, though. The Secret Missile going to pick off 1 single Marine, but you know what? Fantasy, he is really far behind in supply. These additional reinforcements, I think, could seal the deal for Innovation, however.
Yeah, so Fantasy, he knows that he needs to take this position, but these Marines, it's a high counter Marines right now. Focus firing on the siege tank, and what does Fantasy have? No units left. 125 to 46 supply of Fantasy as Innovation is setting to win the game right now.
Charging forward, he doesn't even need these additional reinforcements. GG is called! Innovation and STX Seoul take the first match between them and SK Telecom.
It's been a bumpy ride. It's been a close match between the 2 teams, but with Innovation playing against Fantasy style and knowing what Fantasy was going to do, takes out Fantasy easily in the ace match to bring STX Seoul the victory 4-3.
Indeed, now that gives STX Seoul the advantage. Remember, this is a best of 3. Meaning that both teams, they have to win at least 2 matches if they want to advance to the next round. Now, STX Seoul, they only have to win 1 match, which will be played tomorrow at the same time, I believe, as well. If, though, they lose, we will have a 3rd match on Tuesday.
Yeah, so the confirmed schedule is we are going to have the 2nd round of the semi-playoffs tomorrow between STX Seoul and SK Telecom T1. Depending on the result, we might have a match on Tuesday. If STX Seoul wins, however, they're going to advance, and we're not going to have a match on Tuesday.
That's true. They'll advance to playing against their opponents, KT Rolster, who are waiting for them right before Woongjin Stars. There's SK Telecom. You know, they had a good showing. They had some amazing games, but you know, in the end, they weren't able to bring it in the ace match. Wondering if the Fantasy choice wasn't the best from them. Maybe they should have just relied on Rain, playing a solid macro style against Innovation.
Well, here are your winners. They have 1 win under their back in semi-playoffs. Their name is STX Seoul, going 4-3 against SK Telecom T1.
Yeah, the Protoss lineup really coming through.